All right, hey everyone, how are we doing? Are we completely mind dead and exhausted by the end of this whole event? Right, I'm gonna make that substantially worse. Sorry. My attempt here is to take you through all things AI from the very, very basic all the way up through to agents, and I want to show you what's possible at the sort of cutting edge of what agents have been created nowadays. So here we go, let's get into it. I'm going to start at the basics, absolutely, but I'm sure everyone will be completely on board with that whole chapter. Then we'll get into some AI workflows, so a bit more complicated. We'll define the difference between AI workflows and agents. So there's a lot of talk about what's an agent, and most of it is wrong, and I hope I'll fix that today. We'll get into some real-world examples of both AI workflows and, more importantly, the agents. And then we'll work out when we should use each one. We'll talk a little bit about how to build them. And then I will start just randomly predicting things and see if I can make you all scared about what's coming next. So this is me. I Studio Ghiblified myself, of course, because AI. I am the COO at SSW. We build custom AI solutions for clients. And I am also a salsa world champion, which, despite Adam's insistence, I will not be dancing on stage today. I'm sorry. So the joke in the office is that I talk to Siri more than my wife. I've always been obsessed with the idea of different form factors. So, you know, mobile, we went from desktop to mobile to web to cloud, all that sort of stuff. I think voice and ambient are going to be a big deal. So that's coming. I read way too many AI books. If I'm not, I'm always reading, and it's always about AI. It's either AI sci-fi or AI real stuff. And yeah, it's getting to a ridiculous level. I was just talking to Matt earlier, going through my Goodreads. Thanks, Matt. Thanks. Very helpful. Going through my Goodreads and showing like the ridiculous number of AI books I get through. And the guys at work can only get my attention if they say, hey, no, it's okay. It's about AI. So starting absolute basics, we've all asked ChatGPT, you know, things like, all right, rewrite this email so I sound like an actual professional adult, or write me a LinkedIn post about AI to make me look smart, or help me apologize to my wife for talking to ChatGPT too much, and then turn that into a poem, and then suggest 5 GIFs good enough that she forgets why I was in trouble, right? Oh, can I just get a quick temperature check? Who uses mainly ChatGPT as their LLM? Who uses mainly Claude? Grok? Llama? No llamas, okay. Sorry, Gina. All right, so the next step up from just basically using ChatGPT is putting in some decent custom instructions. Context is king here. So if you go up here, you customize your ChatGPT. I'm sure, can I just get a show of hands? Who's done this already? Fewer than I would have thought. All right, definitely do this. Okay, if you ask a large language model a question and it doesn't know you at all, it's not going to be that useful. It's like asking a stranger on the street as opposed to asking your personal assistant. So put in the basics about you, put in what you want, what you do, what your business is, what you're trying to achieve, who the main people in your family are, who, you know, if you might say, oh, you know, my son's called Darius, he's 8 and his ADHD is crazy. So I ask all the time, oh, Darius just did this, what shall I do? Like, it knows who he is, knows the full context. It now has memory built in, so this is less necessary than it was, but it's still a really good idea. This stuff goes into every prompt you do. So from a business context, really, really useful. So after using a normal LLM, the next step up from that is to start prompt engineering, right? You start learning, like down the bottom right here, you start giving it a role, a result, content, context, intent, and constraint. You can grab this QR code. This is on our public website, on the rules. We have a lot of AI tips and cheat sheets and things on the website. But this is, I'm sure you all by this stage are pretty good prompters. So you will have written up some prompt templates, right? Much more complicated prompts, which you use regularly, right? I'm trying to create a blog post or something, and there's a long and really, really well thought out prompt that I'm going to use again and again with small tweaks. You start saving that on your intranet, sharing it around, that kind of stuff. Next step after that is custom GPTs. So that's where you just get that prompt template that you've already written. I do this a lot, by the way. You can see on the left-hand side here. So we, at SSW, we build AI solutions for a living, for ourselves and for clients, right? So we are advanced users of AI, but I'm still using very basic custom GPTs every day. So this is a tip even at an advanced level. All you do is you put your prompt template up the top there, some conversation starters, a bit of documents that that ChatGPT doesn't normally have access to. So you do RAG, which is retrieval augmented generation, with the documents that you put in there, and you can attach it to APIs for actions as well if you're feeling extra techie. These are really, really useful. We use these all the time. And then we store those in our intranet, share them around. Like at SSW is 100 people. I reckon 50 of those people have written a custom GPT. Who's done either a Claude project or a custom GPT? Cool, about a third of the room. Yeah, really, really recommend that for just automating really basic stuff. It's the simplest way to make a simple AI system that you can reuse all the time. All right, so quick show. I'm assuming most people in this room are software developers, yeah? Yep, good, okay. So this is what we've done so far. That's how far you can get without having a software developer. But once we get you guys involved, we can start looking at something a bit more complicated, which is AI workflows. So you all know the basic concept of a workflow. Every business process, every interaction, customer journey can be sort of thought of as a branching workflow. So we think of this as an AI-enabled decision tree, right? Because you can put in AI at the nodes of that workflow to work out which way down the flow you should go or to generate content for output. Importantly, this is predefined, right? The sequence of steps, the workflow has to be dictated by you, right? Ahead of time. So if you have a well-defined or narrow problem, this is appropriate, this is helpful. So to understand the difference between what we have now and why that's useful and what we used to have before, let's go way back in time, all the way back before November 22 to before generative AI. It feels like a million years ago now, to rules-based systems, okay? It's just to get some contrast. So on the left here, we've got a normal scenario. We're going to reuse this scenario a few times, so get this one into your head, just a customer service bot. So in a rules-based system, it's like in your Outlook, you might have a few rules, which like if the email comes from this person, delete it. If I'm CC'd and there's this word in there, then move it to this folder, all that kind of stuff. Anyone use that stuff? A few people? Yeah. So that's just rules-based systems, right? So here what you do is you have those predefined rules, and then if the message that comes in from the customer matches one of those rules, like they say, the word unsubscribe is in the email. So you go, oh yeah, well in our knowledge base, we have like a little pre-written, here's how you unsubscribe thing. So I'll just feed that up to them if the word comes through. It just sends them back that fixed response. And if it doesn't match one of your rules, then it'll escalate to a human. So this was called ticket deflection. It was used in systems like ServiceNow and Zendesk as well to try and get like the same questions that come in over and over and over again, just answered automatically without too much thought. So fixed rules and responses, it's looking at keywords, not meaning. So if someone says, hey, I accidentally unsubscribed, they're going to get a very helpful message back saying, here's how you unsubscribe, right? So it doesn't think of the semantic understanding of what it's being given. It can't handle that kind of nuance or ambiguity, and it will escalate most queries. Never gets any better. It's rubbish, right? So we still use this sometimes, for instance, email rules, because there are some cases which are that simple, but most cases that we're dealing with are not that simple. So an AI workflow with the same example. Customer sends a message, the AI gets that message, and it analyzes and checks in the knowledge base, but it understands what it's looking at. It figures out, all right, yes, this is a question I can answer. So it generates a nuanced and specific response to that person. It sends that response. If it can't figure it out, it can escalate to a human. And then if the human's response is good, it can then be put back into the knowledge base, so it's now learning and improving, so next time it finds that answer and reuses it. So I'm guessing, who here has built something like this, like a simple chat system, a chatbot of some kind? You guys haven't built that? Not yet? So a few have, okay. This is really good. We do a lot of these. These will continue to be useful. So there's a lot of talk about agents right now. This is not an agent, right? But this is great, and I'll explain why in a bit. So it's, as we know, it's looking at the meaning, it's looking at the actual intent of the message, it semantically understands what's going on, it can handle new questions that come through, it gets better over time, and most importantly, it feels good to get an answer from this, right? If we, for instance, on our SSW website, we have a little chatbot, this is all it's doing. Simple RAG chatbot. Okay, I think if anyone did Adam Stevenson's talk the other day, he was saying this is 90% of the work that they do is RAG chatbots, this. All right, so we'll have a look at a couple of real-life AI workflow examples. Number one, because it's on my t-shirt, is Yakshaver. Okay, so we built this as a workflow. Did anyone go to Adam's talk the other day, or have you spoken to us at the booth? So you kind of vaguely know what Yakshaver is? Yeah. Basically, it's a way to report a bug or a feature, and it works like this. Give me a second. So if I go to a website, this is just one we have, This is a website we have that explains all about our clean architecture stuff. And let's say I've been asked to test it or whatever. I'm looking at it, looks fine. I don't like that features thing. Let's just report that. So all I'm going to do is record my screen. I'm going to use Windows Shift R to use the snipping tool for this, but there's a few different ways that I could do that. There's a browser plugin, all sorts of stuff. I start recording my screen. This is the quickest way to report a feature or bug. So it starts recording, and I just say, right, hi, I'm looking at northwind365.com. Generally looks good, but if I scroll down here, I see this features header, and it's got this red underline that looks like a cross through. It's so fat, it's covering half the word. Let's move that down or make it thinner, maybe talk to the designers and see what's going on there. I think Adam was the one who asked for that. He's wrong. So let's CC him on this. I want to make sure he knows that I don't agree with that. I'm going to get that fixed. Sorry, Adam. So that's it. Now, my work's done, right? I move on with my day. So really, if I had noticed that and I was working and I noticed that, it would have been too hard probably to figure out, right, who's in charge of this website? What backlog is that? You know, how do they like their bugs talked to? He's busy right now. I can't even talk to him anyway. You know, I don't have access to their backlog. Whatever the reason, there's so many reasons you might walk past a bug, right? But we don't have to, because that's all we have to do if you have Yakshaver. By the way, in case you hadn't noticed, we made Yakshaver. We are giving this away for free for 3 months, by the way. So if you go to yakshaver.ai, there's a join waitlist. If you join today or yesterday, you get 3 months for free. So the way this works, you can see this is the full workflow of how it works. It's slightly simplified, but basically this is everything. Who came to Adam's talk yesterday, by the way? So you may have seen this already, some of you, but I'll go through quickly. So the recording comes in. The video that we just took from the snipping thing gets saved into OneDrive. We've got a trigger on that OneDrive folder that goes, oh, new video, I'll do something with that. It converts it to an MP3 and puts it into Whisper, which is OpenAI's speech-to-text transcription service. It takes that transcript. It takes the company-specific information, right? Again, like custom instructions, but for your company. So, you know, what are your projects? Who are your people? What are your people's nicknames? We've got a guy called Luke Cook. We call him Cookie. But we can just say, you know, CC Cookie, and it'll know what we're talking about. Integrates with all these different systems, so it pulls in all that information. Or it tries to figure out, okay, actually, you know, halfway through they decided to cancel, so let's just exit. And it puts that in to make sure, like, along with the transcript, and the AI uses that context to go, right, what did that person want? They were talking about this project, they had these problems, they talked about the screen at this time, etc. It figures out if it's confident enough to just go straight ahead. There we go, it's done it. If it's confident enough to go straight ahead, or if it wants to ask for more questions, like you just mentioned 2 different projects, which backlog do you want this in, right? And then it will grab a screenshot from the recording as well. It will look at your specific company's work item templates. I had a question about this yesterday with like, oh, we like to do things as user stories with, you know, as a, I want, so that, whatever. Yeah, and it generates the content, and then it sends out an email or puts a work item into a backlog. Cool. So let's see if it's done. What it does is, first off, it says, all right, I got your video, and then within a few seconds, that'll pop up with a card a bit like this. Come on, demo gods, don't fail me now. Kind of want to know what Matt said earlier. Matt, is it embarrassing? Yeah, don't do. Okay, here it is. Okay, so here it is. It pops up. It's using the Northwind 365 project. Bug, red underline on features header is too thick, and it mentioned Adam as I asked, and the tech lead. So open up, have a look. So in this case, I think this one's using GitHub. This also works with Azure DevOps, and we're putting Jira in next. So, all right, I requested this issue. It CC'd the people I cared about. It's got a link to the video, right? So I can open up the video and see from the horse's mouth, from the yak's mouth, as we say now, exactly what the problem was with the screen share. It's got the URL, so that's how annoying is it when someone does a bug report and doesn't put in a URL and you've got to find it yourself. So pain, the red underline on the features header is too thick, making it appear as a cross through, and the text is covering half the word. This needs to be adjusted for better readability, acceptance criteria, reproduction steps, screenshot, figure. I can even assign that to someone if I wanted to. So who thinks that's cool? I think that's super, super useful. It's so much quicker than doing that manually, and most of the time I wouldn't bother doing it. I'm one of those people who likes to step over issues because I'm busy, you know, and I take a quick screenshot and hope I remember later what I was supposed to report and stuff like that. So yeah, no, this is really useful, and again, free for 3 months, so grab that. Okay, next example, another AI workflow. Who's used Notebook LM from Google? Only one of you. Fantastic. I was actually worried that this would not blow your socks off, but it will, because this is amazing. I was worried it was too cool and therefore everyone would already know about it. So Notebook LM is free. It's made by Google. I've used it 5 times in anger. I use this every time I can't understand something, right? If I read a lot of AI white papers, and when they come in, a lot of the time I can read them and go, oh yeah, got it. And sometimes I read it and I go, I'm not a developer. This is way over my head. I'm not a deep machine scientist or an AI researcher. This is too deep for me. So I put it into Notebook LM, and it gives me a different way to sort of summarize and ingest that information. So what you do, you come in, you hit Create New, and you upload whatever your source is. So this could be a textbook, it could be a white paper, it could be a website. And the new thing, by the way, is this Discover Sources. So it could just be a topic now as well. It's just you figure out the sources I just know I need to know about transformers or whatever. So once you've done that, you can generate a deep dive conversation, which actually generates a 2-person podcast just explaining this issue back and forth. And I also like the study guide, so you can kind of test your knowledge at the end. So I'll show you what this looks like. I won't play the whole thing. I did a short one, but it's still long-ish. So I'll just play you the first couple of minutes.
Welcome to the deep dive. We're jumping into something pretty big in AI right now.
Sorry, what I did is I took my talk, my slides, I turned it into a PDF, and I pulled it in as the intro, as the information to be explained. Right. So this is my talk explained by AI.
Yeah, the shift towards AI agents.
Exactly. And how they're different from the AI workflows maybe you're more familiar with.
Right. Think of this as a quick briefing, get you up to speed fast.
We're pulling from a presentation, right, called Year of the AI Agent, NDC.
That's the one, given by Ulysses Maclaren back in May 2025. He's the COO and product owner at Yak Shaver, an AI software company.
And he's got this unique background. Salsa champ, talks to Siri, reads all the AI books.
He does. Adds a bit of personality, doesn't it? But yeah, deeply informed.
So our goal here really is just to nail down the core ideas in like 5 minutes. Agents, workflows, what they are, when you use which.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
So maybe start with AI workflows. What are we talking about there?
Okay, yeah. Based on Ulysses' talk, workflows are basically set sequences, predefined steps for problems we already kind of know how to solve.
Like a recipe, step 1, step 2, step 3.
Exactly. Think about customer service bots, the old ones, right?
Oh yeah, the really basic ones.
So you get it, right? So this is really good. That passes the Turing test for me like crazy. Like that sounds just like a real podcast. Anyone think that's cool? What's extra cool about that, by the way, is I can interrupt them like someone calling into a radio show and ask further questions, right? So like if I hit this interactive mode thing, it'll actually say, hang on, we've got a caller here. Hey, what's your question? And I can talk to them and they'll answer my question in real time. It's so cool. I love it. The other thing is hang on, back to the slides. The study guide gives you questions and then you can look up the answers as well. So check your knowledge, check you actually understand it. I also, just a little tip, I also use advanced voice mode on Siri for that as well to stress test my knowledge on something. So before I do a talk like this, if I'm thinking like I really need to know my stuff on the latest things, I will get it to literally I'll ask, hey, can you stress test my knowledge on this topic? Ask me questions, I answer the questions, it critiques my answers. Really, really useful for education. And that Siri is very good for stuff that you can easily Google. Sorry, not Siri, ChatGPT voice mode. This is good for stuff where you have the source material yourself if you want to upload it. So think of it as like a RAG chatbot, right? It pulls in the actual information. So the workflow for this, you pull in the sources, it chunks that up into vectors and embeddings, and then you can ask questions from that information, right? It retrieves the relevant chunks, which is RAG that we talked about earlier, and then it does reasoning with Gemini. This has been updated recently, by the way, to Gemini 2.5 Pro, which is why it's so good. And it gives you the answers with citations, so that way you know there's no hallucination. You can check the original source material, and then the optional overview, audio overview, as we did there. I love this. I honestly recommend, like, you guys are devs, you're upskilling all the time. Use this whenever there's a topic that you've got a big paper on, it's really dense, and you can't be bothered reading it, or you aren't getting it, and use this instead. Okay, got it so far? How are we going? Good? AI workflows? Nailed it. All right, excellent. Agents, this is why we're actually here. Agents are different. An AI agent is capable of autonomously performing tasks by planning its own steps and using available tools. This is the misconception. People think that it's only about using available tools. They think any AI system that can use tools is an agent. It acts, therefore it's an agent. No, it plans, therefore it's an agent. Okay, agency isn't about doing things, it's about doing things it wants to do, making its own sub-goals, being autonomous. Okay, that's the biggest takeaway for today. Cool? Got it? Yes. All right, so the same example we had before, the customer chatbot. So in this case, customer sends a message like, hey, where's my project? Can I change it? Sorry, where's my order? Can I change it? So there's a few steps it goes through. It perceives, it works out, right, where am I up to? What tools do I have available to me to answer this question? What is the question? What's the context? It's pulling in information. It then plans, so it does its own planning. It goes, all right, well, I've got tools. I'm going to need an order ID, so I'll use the CRM system and the order database for that. And then it acts. So it asks for the order ID, it queries the order database and drafts a reply. So this is the specific workflow that it chose to do this time, but if you give it different context, a different prompt, it will use the tools that it has available in a different order, choose to pull in different information, create different sub-goals, and come to a different output. So it figures out what to do with the user's query itself. So an AI agent perceives its environment, so it understands its context. It makes plans. So if you've heard of reasoners, this is the unlock. We've got reasoners recently, it's hard to say, which allows it to have good judgment because it's intelligent and has good logic. And then it takes actions towards a goal and uses tools for that. Who's heard of MCP servers? So that's the tools can be MCP servers. The agents themselves can also be MCP servers because an agent can be a tool for another agent. So, and for all this, it doesn't need step-by-step instructions. It doesn't need to have been pre-told exactly how to do this or told at the time how to do it. It's going to figure it out itself. So let's go through those steps. First one, perception. That's getting data in, right? It's seeing where it's up to. It's pulling in data from its surroundings. For physical data, that could be for a robot or a car, any physical agent. It's going to be using cameras, sensors, microphones, etc. For a digital agent, which is what you guys are probably building, it's going to be data streams, pulling in information from APIs, user inputs, prompts, all that kind of stuff. And it's also, as you saw, that was a circle. It might not do everything in one pass, right? It might plan, act, and then perceive and go, oh, I didn't quite get everything, so I'll make a new plan, I'll act, I'll see where am I up to, and kind of keep going through that loop until it finally goes, yeah, okay, got it. So the planning step, this is important. You tell it to go, for instance, if I'm an agent and I need to go over there, right? I've been told to go over there, but I haven't been told how to get there, right? My assumption will probably be, right, my sub-goal is pretty straightforward, I'm just going to walk straight over there, right? I have access to this left foot and this right foot, those are my tools, I'm going to go like this, and then like that, and then the cat runs out and trips me up, right? So if I was a workflow, game over, right? Can't handle that. But if I'm planning my own sub-goals, I'm then able to reassess, go, whoa, hang on, there's a cat there, let me just think about this, I should move to the left a bit and then keep going. Right, so when it's planning how to get from A to B, it has to optimize because I could get from here to there by walking, around the chairs, up, climb over the desk, go out the door, 3 circuits of the lab, back in again, right? So it has an infinite amount of potential ways to do things. It's got to work out what's the most optimal way that I should do this. And to do that, it has to predict not only, what's likely going to happen along the way, but also what the actions that I take, how will that affect the world, so that then I'll have to think about the rest of my plan. If I decide that step 1 is to drag this table over here, I need to take that into account for the rest of my plan. And it's got to handle the cat running underneath me. So it's got to be able to handle uncertainty and be adaptive. So then the third thing is tools. This is generally integrations, right? So APIs that let them actually, instead of just being a chatbot that can give chat responses or summarize things and just answer, it can actually affect the world. So that could be pulling in required information, accessing databases, browsing the web, doing RAG, running code via an API, updating a database, a CRM system, clicking buttons in a user interface, typing stuff in, or physical interactions, right? Robots moving things, turning on the thermostat, whatever, closing the garage door. Or, and this is the interesting one, invoking another AI workflow or agent, right? So again, these whole systems are also tools, right? So if you talk about a multi-agent swarm or multi-agent flows, this is where one agent calls another agent, which invokes another agent, which calls back to the first agent. And there's a lot of orchestration layers and stuff for the communication between agents now. A lot of the conversation around agents is on that layer at the moment. So if you hear about the A2A framework, for instance, That's something that's there. Another thing is memory, right? You can get an agent without memory, but often they haven't. So within the context, right, if I'm trying to get from here to there, it's kind of interesting for me to remember, oh, there was a cat who ran under my feet earlier. I should keep an eye out in case it runs under my feet again, that kind of stuff. So within the short context, the actual session itself, or longer term, you've got continuous learning, and RL there is reinforcement learning. Who's heard of reinforcement learning? Right, big deal, especially in our arena of coding. There's a very strong reward function for that, which means that our coding agents are getting much better than a lot of other agents at the moment because of that. All right, the last thing is just autonomy. So a useful agent should operate without requiring step-by-step human intervention, but you can have a human in the loop. And at the beginning, you often will, just until you're comfortable with how the thing works. Then after a while, you kind of take the reins off. So you give it, this is one that Callum gave me, actually, I like this. Give it the what and the why, but not the how, right? Which is also how Simon Sinek says to work with employees. Right, so there are some limitations. It's not perfect. It's less predictable than an AI workflow, okay? You're not exactly sure what it's going to choose as sub-goals, right? You might assume that, oh, I'm going to tell it to do that, and my assumption is it would just walk, but for some reason it decides to go down this side of the lights. You know, why did you do that? Well, because it's a little bit unpredictable. It might have an incomplete understanding, right? So you might have not given it enough custom instructions, enough context to really understand. And we instantly tend to think of agents as humans, right? Because there's an anthropomorphic projection situation where if I'm talking to ChatGPT, I kind of think it's like I'm talking to an employee. They should get what I'm saying, right? But just like a new employee, they might not have the full context. So be empathetic to your agents. I know that sounds ridiculous, but it's a good way to think about it, because you think, all right, you probably didn't get that because I didn't tell you about this or the thing that happened last week or the extra goal that I have. So think that you might need to inject more context throughout your interactions with agents. They do have that need for oversight, especially at the beginning. This is just the nature of the beast, but I think that's probably fine from our own point of view. We're going to be more comfortable if we start off with it very much under control before we let it loose. They're less efficient than an AI workflow, right? Again, you know, it might decide to walk left, right before it goes straight, right? So I know I'm giving the world's simplest example here, but think of something more complicated. It might not do the optimal way. It might work around the edges and figure it out, and then with continuous learning, it gets better and more efficient over time. But generally, nothing is as efficient as a predefined workflow, because the predefined workflow, your whole organization has already thought this through, right? So the way to do this is to think of it like a new employee. A new employee, you wouldn't, like if you hired a new accountant, you wouldn't say, here's the access to the company credit card, go nuts, you figure it out, right? You'd have a few things in place. You'd have like an induction system, you'd have oversight, you'd have an approval gateway, whatever it is. It's very similar. It's a useful kind of mental model. So starting with a human in the loop, so they can review, they can approve things before they actually happen. So an agent might go, oh, I've done this. Do you want me to push that through? Or do you want a modification to that before it goes through? You can inject more context. So we talked about that with the incomplete understanding. You need ways to roll back if it does do something unexpected, right? Again, the sub-goals are the problems. The goal that you set it is not normally the problem. It's how it gets there that's the problem. So in order to do X, it might do Y, and you didn't want it to do Y. So you need ways to be able to roll back and go, okay, no, not that. More context, try again. You need fallback strategies. So that might, if the whole thing stuffs up completely, you might need a default outcome, or again, hand over to a human like we did with the chatbot. Self-correction is ideal if it can kind of stuff up and go, oh, no, I can fix that. Rate limits are interesting. It can start spinning its wheels, right? And every AI interaction has a token cost, it has an AI cost. Most of the time, you're not doing this on your own device. You're using it with cloud services. So you can give it rate limits to say, all right, you've had enough of a go at that. Let's dial back and we'll start again. And then the last thing is logging and auditing, so that your humans can go through and go, right, what happened there, right? You need to be able to trace what it touched, what it did. So you kind of want that traceability. Does that all make sense so far? Yeah? All right, so quick recap. Workflows run the playbook, but agents rewrite it when the field shifts. Both are useful. So an AI workflow The goal is it follows a set recipe. It's got a pre-written flowchart. It doesn't adapt. So it doesn't adapt, which means that if you wanted it to do something else, you have to build in the workflow yourself for it to do something else. And ideally, you use this for routine, regulated work. And it's outside the spec, it just doesn't work, right? It's going to do what it's supposed to do. It's not going to do anything else. It's a bit more like regular software that way. An agent can hit a moving target. The plan, it writes itself, it works it out, it dynamically adjusts its plan, figures out new sub-goals as it needs to. It can adapt, it can learn mid-flight. So this is great for messy, changing problems. And it's harder to govern, and it costs more to run, because it's going to try lots of different things every time. We getting it so far? Yeah, okay, excellent. I'm going to give you some real-world AI agent examples. I first gave this talk a couple of months ago, in February, and it was a great month to do it in, because all the really cool agent stuff came out in February. So, and I've updated this talk since then to add more stuff that's come out since then as well. So my first example is self-driving cars. I use this because, I'll just turn it down. I use this because it's the quintessential example of a messy open world scenario. Like how am I going to deal with all of these situations? What if a kangaroo jumps out in front of me, right? And I like this because this was the full self-driving demo in February. So this was literally brand new when I showed it. And they do these updates all the time to the investors and stakeholders. And all this checklist on the right is all the sort of different scenarios that historically self-driving vehicles struggle with, right? How do I deal with merging? How do I deal with an unprotected turn is when you're trying to turn but there's no like green arrow, you just got to figure out when to go. Forks when one lane becomes two, roundabouts go in the wrong direction because they're in America, all this kind of stuff. But this is great because everyone can understand this, right? This is a situation where obviously you can't build a workflow for every potential traffic incident, right? So they've been working on this problem for a long time. It's a very open-ended and complex problem to solve. So obviously now with the hindsight and knowing what agents do, it's an obvious use case for an AI agent. But back then, back in 2004 to 2007, there were no agents, right? So DARPA had a grand challenge with a huge prize every year. There was lots of different labs that were trying to solve this. And they were all trying to use AI workflows to solve this. After that, from 2008 to 2014, they started using machine learning. They started using neural networks and shifting towards an agentic model. And from 2015 to 2017, Tesla, Waymo from Google, and NVIDIA have showed real success with that. So using a lot of deep learning and reinforcement learning techniques. And this really established the agent paradigm. Now, I love this stat. Has anyone ever driven a self-driving car, like a Tesla or anything like that? Okay, cool, yeah, about 10 people. Has anyone seen one driven? Yeah, a few people? Cool. They are, when you're in them, at the very beginning, when you first hand over control, you're terrified. You're like this. You're like, oh God, was it supposed to do that? Oh God, why didn't it put the brakes on? You're like jittery. And then within about 5 minutes, you're bored. Right? It's crazy how quickly you get used to it. But what's interesting is everyone assumes that they are a better driver than the AI, right? But the stats actually show that full self-driving is already 5 times safer than your average human. I'm sure we're all above average drivers, but yeah, that's a crazy stat to me. And the stats for that are there's 0.3 accidents per million kilometers, whereas humans have 1.5 accidents per million kilometers. So already it's 5 times safer than us. We should all be doing this now. Why aren't we doing it? Anyone know? Shout it out. Hey? Insurance, that's a good one, yeah? It's regulation, right? We can't figure out how to do it. Like what happens in an accident? Whose fault is it? Right? All those kinds of things. But I mean, 5 times safer, that's still the same kind of order of magnitude. What if it was 10 times safer? What about 100 times safer? 1,000 times safer? Like, should we be allowed to drive at that stage? Right? Yeah, it's a really interesting point. Right? And this is going to happen in more and more different fields. Right? Does anyone know Lee Sedol from the Go champion? There's a game called Go, very famous game like chess, and there was a long competition, thank you, someone knows it, long competition of AIs trying to beat the Go champions, right? We already beat Garry Kasparov with Deep Blue way back when, but Go was way harder. They said it was impossible because it's a massive problem space. There's so many, it's not just an 8x8 board. I can't remember what the numbers are, but it's substantially larger than that. And it was beaten. It was beaten by AlphaGo. And just like this, like already self-driving cars have beaten humans on average, and it's going to get better and better. This is going to happen in more and more different kind of narrow areas. So just watch out for that, he says ominously. So just to prove it's an agent, it's perceiving, it's integrating data from multiple sources, it's got cameras in case of Tesla, LiDAR in the case of Waymo's, GPS, etc. It's trying to build an accurate world model. It's making decisions, it's planning, it's using real-time autonomous decision-making to go from A to B while trying to optimize for safety. And obviously the tools are the accelerator, the indicators, the steering wheel, etc. It's memory. Every time it has a close call, right? It's got all those cameras constantly going. They're not just to sense, they're also to log. What happened there? Oh, we tried this, it didn't work, let's try that differently next time. And it's not one car learning, right? If you've got, 10 million Teslas on the road, you've got 10 million sources of information all going back to one brain. So every car teaches the whole fleet how to drive better, which is why it keeps getting better over time. And eventually, as I said, when it's 1,000 times safer than a human, should we be allowed to drive, or should it just be a hobby thing that we have to go into a separate little safe area to do it? I was talking to the Uber driver on the way here about that. He had opinions. All right, who's used deep research? Any kind of deep research? Yeah, fair few people, good. Who's used OpenAI's? Who's used Google's? Anthropic? Okay, cool. So this is fantastic. One of the biggest takeaways, in fact, the biggest takeaway for anyone who hasn't used this, use this. This is economically useful now. So what you do is you provide a complex research prompt, and the agent will search the web, read and analyze hundreds of sources, and then compile a comprehensive report with citations. So obviously, it wrote this talk for me. Okay? First thing I did, I got onto it, I put it on voice mode, and I did a context dump. I just went, right, I'm going to be giving this talk. This is what I want, whatever it is I'm saying. So, I didn't type this. I said, I'm going to give a 45-minute talk about AI agents at the SSW.NET user group in Sydney. This is when I did it back then. I'd like your help to first work out the optimal title and topic for my talk. Keep in mind that I'm an AI expert, but I'm not a software developer. SSW is a company of software developers, and we build custom AI systems for our clients, blah, 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 blah. I just said everything I could think of, right? It comes back with questions. It's like, all right, look, I'm going to spend up to half an hour on this. I better make sure I got it right. I answer those questions. And then, in this case, it took 4 minutes, which is pretty good. And it used 24 different sources, and it wrote me this. And this, it could just be a dump of rubbish. This was like really, really useful information. And remember, this is cutting edge stuff, right? Like I'm talking about AI agents the month that all these agents just came out. So that was 15 pages and 4,500 words of useful information. So how does that work? Well, the prompt, the user provides a query with optional files. You can add files in as context as well. It autonomously plans, right? This is where it's agentic. It does agentic search. So it defines the objectives, it does the research steps, and then it iteratively keeps on going. It does some searching, it finds some things, and then it thinks, oh, that means I should probably look for this kind of information instead. It does all that through the web. It looks at articles and papers and weights them more heavily than like rubbish it finds on Reddit. It analyzes through that information, synthesizes it into a structured report, it compiles it, and delivers the analysis with citations and the methodology. And yeah, it was so useful. Like I was blown away by how useful this was. So this uses O3 in its agentic workflow, which is interesting. O3 just came out for our use 2 weeks ago, right? Back in February, you could use it already, but only via deep research. It can take up to half an hour and lots of compute. So don't just ask your question and then wait for it to do the thing and then look at the answer, because probably your first thought about what to ask won't be quite right. I recommend asking your question to normal ChatGPT or normal AI, getting some ideas, doing some back and forth iterating, working out, all right, in this case, who's my audience, what's the main message I'm trying to get across, etc., then putting that into deep research. And when you're done, look at the citations. The citations were gold. In my case, I am obsessed with AI. It's all I do, right? Every day I'm on YouTube, I'm on Twitter, I'm on everything, just like absorbing AI information. But I didn't know anything about IBM's videos or their papers or anything. I had written off IBM as like an old pre-generative player. They are great. They've got some really, really good content I wasn't aware of until I did this. So OpenAI is not the only one. Google actually got there first in December 2024, but they've updated it with the latest Gemini now, and it's much better. And Perplexity and Grok also have ones. Got that? What's it called? Deep research, yeah. Remember takeaways, useful takeaways for everyone. Deep research, Notebook LM, okay? Next one's operator. This one's just, for now, fun, okay? So, do you know what operator is? Yeah? It's a computer using agent, right? It's a browser using agent, and it uses the keyboard and mouse for you, right? That's the whole thing, is it kind of replaces you out of the system and it does everything for you. So I did this. I was doing the user group. I said, get me a large pepperoni pizza delivered to my address on Wednesday at 8 p.m. I pressed go, and I stood back. I didn't do anything else. I just watched. Right, now I'd given some custom instructions. I'd said, I like crust pizza, and the address is this place, and my name is this. So it goes, all right, I had to use a VPN, by the way, because the only way to use this at the time was if you're in America. So I was pretending I was in America. So I thought, all right, New York crust, that's not a thing. Oh, here we go, I found it, Australian crust. He said his address is in Australia. This was like 11 o'clock at night, by the way, so I couldn't actually get a pizza at the time, but it goes, all right, first off, it's trying to get the address in here. You know how it's like one of those ones where you have to type it in and pick it from a drop down? It got a bit stuck there, but then it kind of tried back a few times and it figured that one out. There we go, it's managed to get the drop down, we're in. So can't deliver right now, but we can place a pre-order. I'm like, great, okay, this is in 3 days, perfect. So it goes, all right, yep, let's make a pre-order. He asked for a large pepperoni, so there's the pizzas, there's the pepperoni down the bottom right. Oh, the UI is a bit rubbish. I've just selected the wrong one. That's definitely a Supreme. Okay, it's ordered me a Supreme. Let's have a look. Hold on, it's figured it out. No, that's not a pepperoni, that's a Supreme. Cool, all right, get rid of that please, remove. Let's try that again. Should we scroll down? Yes, there it is. Nope, that's a Vietnamese chili chicken. Okay, there we go. All right, so you see it's kind of drunk and fumbly, but it gets there. Yeah? So there we go, it's added a pepperoni pizza, and it goes, yes, please, let's go. And then it goes, no, you can't. It has to be $25 or more. So it stops, and it asks me, hey, Yuli, what do you want me to do? I said, I don't know, get a Coke. So it goes back in, it adds to the order, puts a Coke in there. So I like that. It's like it's trying to do the thing, and then it escalates to you when it gets stuck. It sets the day, it was the Wednesday, I said 8 p.m. Puts in the order, puts in the details it knows, so which is my name, but then I didn't give it my payment details, so again it comes back to me and says, hey, can you pay please? Right? This was really cool. Like I had seen videos of people attempting to do this. I'd seen videos of people attempting to do this with the Anthropic one that came out first, and it was, so hit or miss. It was like a 30% pass rate. That did that the first time. That wasn't like my 8th attempt. I did that first time. So that was kind of cool. But I mean, realistically, I did that time and I've never done it since. It's not useful enough for me yet that I'm actually giving it work. But it could be. So I give it my prompt. I give it some custom instructions. So it knew, where my office was that I wanted the pizza delivered to. It knew my name. I could give it my payment details if I wanted to. You can give website preferences. You can give your logins. Right, if you try and get anything done in an incognito window that doesn't have your usual passwords and stuff, it's a nightmare, right? So that's where you've got to be empathetic again and go, all right, I've got to log you into all this stuff before you're actually useful for me. But if you do that, it is substantially more useful. And then the output, it figures out what you're trying to achieve. It makes a plan. It opens up the browser. It looks at a screenshot. It clicks buttons. It types things in, et cetera, et cetera. And then it escalates back to me again every time it gets stuck. So I recommend if you really want to play with this, give it access to a bank account and just put like $50 in there, $100 in there or something and say, go nuts. You can't do too much damage. Let's see how this happens and just see what it orders for you. I'm hoping, please don't sue me if that goes horribly wrong. It's slow, it's fumbly. APIs are substantially better. Realistically, this isn't the way you want software to interact with your software, right? But the internet was designed for humans, right? So what I would say is, what you are capable of doing via APIs is maybe 1% of the things that you can do on the internet, right? The other 99% of things, you need a human. Well, now you have an AI that can drunkenly do those things. So you can use it as a fallback. You can try and use APIs. If there's no API, you go on operator, go do it the slow way. This is amazing for front-end testing. So sorry, Selenium, but you can now, say, all right, try and use my system, and then just watch how it goes. It's almost like watching a user do it. There are competitors for this. So Anthropic, as I said, got there first, but it was terrible. Browser use is open source, and interestingly is being used now by a lot of other agents, including Manus, if you've heard of Manus. And just this last month, Microsoft Copilot Studio came out with computer use, which is nice because it's not just your browser, that's your whole computer, it's your file systems as well. Who thinks that's kind of cool? Like, it's like watching a toddler, start using things, but toddlers grow up to be useful people sometimes. All right, Manus. Who's heard of Manus? Okay, you should have all heard of Manus if you're into AI agents. Manus is the biggest AI agent thing happening at the moment. It came out of China. It came out of nowhere, honestly. We've got a Chinese accountant who is the only person in the business who is not that into AI. He told me about this before, all my AI channels told me about this. So there was a lot of hype in China about this, and then it spilled out into the rest of the world. And hilariously, you actually can't use this in China now because it uses Claude, and they won't let you use Claude in China. So just to show you what's going on here, on the Manus website, if you sign up, you get 1,000 credits for free. And you can see, like on their homepage, just the stuff that people are doing with it. It's a general purpose agent. It can do kind of anything, so therefore it's not for any one thing. So the way they've kind of tried to say, here's all the things you can do with it, is every time you use it, you can publish what you did back to the website. So you kind of just see, the gallery of what everyone's done with it. This only came out last month, 2 months ago in March. So let's do this. This is fun. I got access to this via early access. All right, so what this is a replay of what happened. So I asked, this is real, I'm going to be traveling around Australia with my wife and 2 kids. They'll be 9 and 11 by then for 4 months next year. We're in a Honda CR-V. We're going to be towing a Cub Camper Escape. We're going to start from Sydney, and we'd like to see some of Western Australia as part of the trip. We've also never been to Tasmania, so if both are possible, that would be great. We also don't want to drive every day and would prefer to spend a few days at least at each location to minimize the number of times we have to set up camp. Please give me a travel itinerary with all the places we should visit on our trip, how long each drive is, points of interest near each campsite, likely costs, etc., etc. Include anything else you think is interesting. Now, what's going on the right there is that's all the things it did. It agentically made plans, did research, wrote code, executed that code, and I'll just skip to the results and show you what it did. So it's kind of similar to deep research, feels a bit like deep research, but it goes a little bit further. So it created a 4-month itinerary for me, and it has everything, days 1 to 3, days 4 to 5, where we're going to be, what we should do at each place, and on and on and on and on and on and on and on, right? It also wrote some code. I'm like, what's that? Okay, that's helpful. I don't know how to do that. I'll show you in a second why I did that. It showed me what I'm going to be spending my money on. It's got a summary here. You're going to need petrol, accommodation, food, entertainment around the areas, all that kind of stuff. And then this is what the code was for. It actually wrote and executed this to make an interactive map with all the locations that I'm going to be going along the way, which is cool. And the other thing it did the code for is it made me a website that I can share with my family, right? This is crazy. So it has I did an iteration on it to get a different map, but again, the detailed itinerary on the website, what we're going to do each month. And check this out. Tips, activity ideas, budget constraints, a quiz for the kids, because I told them I had 2 kids, like 8 questions they can answer, and a photo gallery that we can upload things from our trip along the way. I didn't ask for this stuff, right? It just goes, oh yeah, if you want that, you're probably going to need this because of the context that you gave me. This is what AI is going to be capable of, this sort of, I'm getting goosebumps here, like the delight that you feel when you get something like that, like so above and beyond. It's crazy. Like that really, really impressed me. Question from Adam? Yeah, that's a good question. I have a half-baked plan. So yes, it changed my plan, but I think it'll change again. But I think I'm going to be playing with Manus when I'm making this plan, because this is really fun. Cool? Cool, right? Yeah, that was crazy cool. So what is Manus? The thing about Manus is that feels like a huge, technological achievement. They're going to be rich. There's no moat around that business at all. We could build that. I'll tell you why. All it is it's just using Claude 3.5, it was 3.5, they've upgraded to 3.7 Sonnet, and 29 tools. All of these tools are publicly available. Search, open source things like browser use, file manipulation, code execution, everything it does, we could have done this. We just didn't. They beat us there, right? They got the first mover advantage. But this is the sorts of things you can build. It's insane to me. And the code writing and execution part of that is a huge deal. Right? There's a lot of sneering at vibe coding that goes on because a lot of vibe coded stuff is really rubbish. But for use cases like this, and I don't know if you saw our little arcade game out there, that was vibe coded in one night. For throwaway things like this, like where you just need something that's just good enough for a second to delight you and then move on, this is kind of cool. Now, this is interesting. This picture here on the right was taken by our head of marketing who went to a Manus meetup 2 nights ago. And he came back and he told me this. Their admins at Manus, they were working on a different system. They were trying to build a browser similar to Arc, right? But they saw that Arc was struggling because it's hard to move into the browser game. It's very embedded in, Edge and what's the big one? I'm having a mind blank. Chrome, yeah, thank you. So while they were doing that, their admins were using Cursor. They were all using Cursor, but their admins were using it, but they didn't care. Who's used Cursor, by the way? Yeah, Cursor's great as well. They didn't care about the code side of the screen, which is like 2/3 of the screen. They just cared about the right-hand side of the screen, right? The chat interface. So they're like, hang on, there's something here. And they just shipped just the right-hand side of the screen. That's all this is. Right? But I think that's such a cool story. It reminds me of the Viagra story. They tried to make it for heart medication and realized there was a side effect that was actually way more profitable. I don't know if you guys know what that is. Google it. Okay, actually Perplexity is, sorry. All right, moving on. Coding agents. Who's afraid of coding agents? I'm afraid of coding agents. I think these are going to be good. So if you know about Devon, Cursor, GitHub Copilot, at the moment, they're good for simple stuff. They're going to get better. They're going to start threatening us more, I think. Let me play this video to you. Oh, sorry.
Every day and has a backlog of many issues despite hundreds of contributors. Let's take a look at one of the issues. We have a bug report here which highlights a missing validation in the GH repo rename command. This is a kind of improvement that might be on the backlog for a while before being worked upon. What if you could hand this off to your AI assistant so that you and your team can stay focused on the big picture? We are working on a new Copilot agent which will make this a reality. We can assign the issue to Copilot, which picks up the issue right away and gets to work. There are about 200,000 lines of Golang code across 700 files in the repo. So Copilot has to do some work in the background to figure out what to do. After a few seconds, Copilot spins up a draft PR and links it to the issue we created, which we can see in the issue timeline. In the PR description, Copilot has shared its implementation plan, so we know how it is approaching solving the issue. As it continues working on the task, Copilot keeps updating the PR description and pushes incremental commits, so we can follow along to its progress on the changes. A few minutes later, Copilot updates the PR description with a summary of the changes it has made once it has completed working on the PR. It has also pushed commits with the final changes, requested a review, and marked the PR as ready for review. Let's take a look at the changes it has made, which are across multiple files. We can see that it has implemented a fix for the bug while also following all of the conventions of our repo, like code style. Copilot has also updated the tests and run them to make sure they're passing before pushing the code. While reviewing the changes in the implementation, I noticed that showing an error message to the user would be helpful if validation fails. I can ask Copilot to improve that. I will select parts of the code and add a comment that specifies to add an error message. I will submit my PR review requesting for changes so Copilot can make the necessary modifications. Copilot reacts to my comment to let me know that it has seen it and is working on it. Soon, Copilot replies to me with a detailed comment on the changes it has made and also pushes updates to the PR addressing the comment. Let's take a look at the changes it has made in the PR. There it is. The code looks great now, so I'll resolve the conversation and approve the PR. I could accept Copilot's changes and merge right away, but I want to make some more changes myself. As a developer, I remain in control and I can continue making changes to this PR as needed.
Right. Who went to Manus talk this morning? A few people? So this is not agent mode. This is another step up from agent mode. So you've got GitHub Copilot, which just gives you code suggestions. You've got the chat, so you can talk about your code and understand it better. You've got agent mode, which allows you to kind of take one more step away, where you just let it kind of run, a little bit of oversight, run, add more in, run. So it's just a little bit more hands-off. This is another layer of abstraction entirely, where you're literally not looking at the code at all. You're just assigning the work to, it's called a SWE agent, SWE, Software Engineering Agent. So if you hear about a Copilot SWE agent, it's probably going to be released later this year. In fact, it will definitely be released later this year. And the idea is, it's another level of abstraction. So if you saw Adam's talk, we talked about yak shaving issues directly to the SWE agent. Now this is a simple one. SWE agent can handle this. Right? So the work item is the prompt, and the code base is the context. By the way, context windows are exploding. Right? There's now like 10 million context windows for Llama 4, which is huge. So imagine how much code it can kind of understand at the same time. This was a big unlock because previously GitHub Copilot had to just sort of look at the local code and maybe pull in one or two extra things. Now it can have more and more context for its decision making. It shares its plan, it implements it, it updates the tests and documentation. So, and then submits a pull request for review. So yeah, look, I think that is a big deal. I talked a little bit earlier about reward functions. That is what is allowing those kind of things to get so much better so quickly. Now this one is not as spectacular, but it's interesting because it's one we built, right? So this is a real life one that we built. It's called Beryl, which I love. It's like the most Australian thing I've ever heard, for the Australian Payroll Association. So what it does is, for their business, there are a bunch of HR and payroll experts, and people just ask them questions. They have like an interface where people come in and just say, hey, how much am I supposed to pay this guy? Or he took this much leave and then this happened, and what am I supposed to do? Right? So very specific payroll and HR questions via HubSpot tickets or emails. And then it uses agentic search through the internet, previous questions, current awards, their interpretation of those awards, and other reference data. So this is interesting, by the way, if you're building this sort of stuff for your clients. You have to have something like this. This is your moat, right? This is their private data that they have access to that just straight up ChatGPT doesn't have access to. And then those generated answers go to an employee who can make any edits that are needed and send it on. So a question comes in like this. It could be quite complicated. I won't read it all because it's long and boring. But basically, long, complicated payroll question comes in, and long, complicated, specific answer is generated. That gets given at the moment to an internal employee who is the one who would usually be answering that question, and they can either approve that answer or they can decline it and make edits and then send it through themselves. The reason we put in this approve decline step is because this allows us to have benchmarking in evals based on how successful is our agent being at giving perfect answers that mean that theoretically I wouldn't need the human in the loop at all. So this is, Adam mentioned I was going to talk a little bit about benchmarks and evals. This is what it looks like. Over time, you can see a trend. You can see the answer, the question that came in, the answer that AI made, the answer that the human ended up using, and then we do some work to try and figure out what are the key differences between those two. Was it just, did they just not like the formatting and add a comma or their own signature at the end or something, or was there some fundamental information missing? And according to the benchmarks, we're at about 35% perfect answers as marked by staff. Interestingly, the owner of the business thinks that those staff may be scared that this is coming for their jobs and they're being extra harsh, because she went through and looked at 2 weeks of data herself. So they get 30 of these a day about. So she looked at 2 full weeks. 1 week she got 83% acceptable answers, and then the following week she got 87% acceptable answers. So very different from what the staff are marking it as. But looking at trends matter, right? So what the team's doing is they're making changes. they're adding in extra guardrails, they're putting extra RAG or changing the agentic search or whatever. And it's really hard to tell, is the change I made a good thing or a bad thing, right? Should I undo that? Should I have done that, right? So looking at trends, make a change, look at the trend, make another change, roll back, whatever. It's quite experimental.
Quick question.
Yeah.
Has that been implemented as an AI workflow?
No, this is an agent.
What should how the agent follows the human interaction part?
Oh yeah, okay, no, good question. So there is it's got a tool, basically. There is a workflow with an agentic part to it. So the search part, the RAG part, is agentic search. The difference between search and agentic search is, you put in the prompt or the search term or whatever, you find, say, 10 pieces of potentially relevant things, you pull them back and then you synthesize a response. Agentic search is you do a search, you look at the information, then with the information you got and your original search, you work out what to search for next. And you do that again and again until you're happy that you've got all the information, then you synthesize a response. So that in this case, that's the agentic part here. But yeah, you're right, it's kind of a hybrid because there's a workflow component as well. So at the moment, this is pretty good. It's speeding up stuff a lot, like 87% of the time it's got perfect answers, so that's helping heaps. But each answer further trains the model, and eventually the idea is that this is an infinitely scalable solution that can be passed out. This is quite expensive for this client to provide to her clients, but she will be able to offer this to anyone, in her case Australia, because that's the Australian rules. She won't have to worry about the cost of that. They're tiny at that point, right? It makes an infinitely scalable model. All right, I put that in because I thought it was interesting to see, how we actually built it. So when do you use agents versus when do you use a workflow? So a workflow is structured and predictable. It's good when you have nervous clients who care a lot about compliance and governance. It's optimized, it's efficient, it's relatively cheap, but it's dependent on human design. By the way, for YakShaver, we had a long debate at the beginning of YakShaver. Should we build an agent or should we build an AI workflow? And the spoiler alert is we're now going to do both. We're going to end up with a hybrid. It can't operate outside the box. And so you use it for well-defined or narrow tasks where you really know what the people want to do and the space, between the person and that outcome. You use an AI agent when you don't know what's going to happen. It's an open problem space. There's unknown unknowns. You need to be adaptable. You have to be able to dynamically adjust your approach. You need it to get better over time. You need to factor in reinforcement learning. Interestingly on this, the model gets better over time. When the model gets better, an AI workflow gets a little better. When the model gets better, an AI agent gets a lot better, right? So you can build an agent that's kind of crap and then wait 6 months and not do anything, plug in the new model, and suddenly it's probably quite a lot better. It's a bit less predictive because it's more creative. As I said before, it can be inefficient. It tries different routes, not necessarily the tried and true approach. So you use this for open-ended and complex tasks. This is like the main takeaway of my talk. Are we getting it? Yep? Okay, cool. So you use an agent when you want a problem solver that you can delegate tasks to rather than a fixed procedure that you want done the same every time. Now, a hybrid approach is kind of what I forewarned about earlier, which is where our same method from before, your customer sends in a message, the same workflow happens down the left-hand side. But instead of escalating to a human when it gets stuck, now it can escalate to an agent, right? And the agent can use all its tools, and when the agent gets stuck, it can escalate to operator, and it can and then finally go back to a human. So that way you get predictable outputs for the use cases that you anticipate, but it's flexible for unanticipated ones. So why build this stuff now? Basically, the reasoning of the models just got good enough, right? It was okay with enough guardrails and enough hand-holding. It was sort of figuring stuff out, but they're getting better and better, faster and faster. And now 65% of organizations are already using GenAI. And funnily enough, the bigger the organization, the less they're using it because they're the slowest movers. 75% of the people who are using it say it saves them about 30 minutes a day, at least. And Microsoft did a study and found that Copilot users finish tasks 29% faster than people without Copilot. And you've probably all heard the stats, trillions of dollars coming. Yay, let's all get a piece of that. So pricing, I actually stole this slide directly from Adam's slides because it's very important. Pricing is going down really, really fast. This is a logarithmic scale on the left here. It's getting 10 times cheaper minimum, right? There's some of these are 900 times faster per year, right? So over 2 years, this has been since GenAI came out, over 2 years, that's 100 times faster, right? Next year, it'll be 1,000 times cheaper, right? So what you can do, you can build an agent that doesn't work and is too expensive and wait 6 months, right? So you don't need necessarily for your proof of concept to work, right? That's risky because obviously there will be things that aren't yet possible, but it also means it's also really exciting, right? You can build things that you think you're right on the verge of, and by the time you've finished building it, it works. So plan for the future on that. For clients, an adoption roadmap. Start off with really low risk internal copilots that just help them with their jobs, suggest things to them, help them work through things faster, get them 29% faster. Then automate internal workflows where there's no brand risk. You're not going to piss off any clients. If it goes wrong, you can fix it and not talk about it. And then once you get the hang of that, you can have customer-facing agents, which is where it really takes off. But generally, you need to get past phases 1 and 2 and comfortable with phases 1 and 2 before you've probably got the risk appetite for phase 3. Now, data security, I get a lot of questions. I talk to a lot of different clients about AI. That's my whole job. And the most common question I get is, oh, I can't use AI. You know, legal says that we're not allowed to because it's too risky. Using an LLM inside an enterprise tenant, like an enterprise tenant of OpenAI or Azure or Google Cloud, is no riskier than storing documents inside SharePoint or using Xero, right? It's the exact same risk vector. If you're already using those things, there's no reason to fear AI from a data security point of view. There has end-to-end encryption. Your prompts stay private, so it's not used to train the base models. And there is tenant isolation, so your data never leaves your tenant. This is a big deal. If you're talking to clients about stuff, that's important. That will put a lot of people at ease. Now, not everyone knows this, but I'm sure most of you do. If you've got the ChatGPT mobile app in your pocket, I recommend doing this right now. Actually, who has paid LLM of some kind? Who's using the free LLMs? Cool. All right. If you're using free, then by default, you're training the model. Okay, but you can turn it off. If you're using paid, if you're Teams level or up, then by default this is off. But even at the plus level, the $20 a month, this is on. So I highly recommend everyone grab your phone, go to your menu, click on your face, go to data controls, and turn this off. Improve the model for everyone. If you have any kind of worries about your IP, obviously, if you don't care and you like training models and you're not using anything customer information or anything, then go nuts. But yes, if you're doing this professionally, do that. All right, let's talk about how to build them. So first off, we talked about tools, right? Tools are used by agents. They're also used by AI workflows. The way a tool works is you have to have a textual description, like a natural language description of what does this tool do. You have to have a function or one or more functions, so something that performs an action like web search, arguments for that function, like the string that goes into the query, and optionally what the outputs are, right? This is all defined. This is all given to the agent, so the agent knows, right, if I use that tool, what's it for? If you've heard about MCPs, if you use an MCP, Model Context Protocol, then this will update all that information for you, right? And as your tools get better or change and you change the functionality of them, they will be automatically updated. I'm not saying, by the way, you should always use MCP. They're only used when you have a tool that you want more than one agent to use, but it's pretty cool. So workflow frameworks. For pro code, you've got LangChain, then Semantic Kernel from Microsoft, which is open source, and Azure AI, the Azure AI Foundry. For low code, there's a lot of options, right? You've got N8N. Who's heard of N8N, by the way? Who's heard of Make? Okay, cool. So N8N, Make was one of the most popular ones. It's similar to Power Automate from Microsoft, but very kind of accessible to people. N8N has come about since generative AI, and it's overtaken Make in popularity. I recommend N8N. And Microsoft Power Automate and AI Builder is also good. Prompt Flow, Agentforce from Salesforce. Hilariously, Agentforce doesn't make agents. It makes workflows. But they jumped on the branding bandwagon, and I think they were hoping that one day it would make agents. I'm not sure. ServiceNow AI Studio, same deal, and IBM watsonx, Orchestrate. Now, this is probably what you all really want to know. You probably want to take a photo of this one, because this was really hard information to get. Agent frameworks, the most popular and usable AI agent building frameworks at the moment. LangChain Agents has the most stars on GitHub. This is the most popular one. It's open source. You've got Microsoft AutoGen. If you're a Microsoft house, this is extremely good. It's also merging with semantic kernel. So this is kind of where Microsoft's putting its backing for an agent framework. OpenAI has released its own software development kit, Agents SDK. Google has the agent development kit as well. Hugging Face has small agents, Amazon Bedrock agents, and Llama Index agents, and Crew AI, open source. Funnily, right, I did this talk 2 months ago, as I said. I had 4 things on this slide 2 months ago, right? The rest of these have come out in the last 2 months. Yeah, take a photo if you can, because honestly, that's really hard information to get. All right, move on. Now, this is where we get fun. What's coming next? Sorry. Hang on. I mean, at least that's an agent, I suppose. Hang on. OK, here we are. Sorry about that. Don't know what that was. So anyway, OpenAI has predicted this themselves. They said, OK, this is how we think this is going to roll out. There's going to be 5 steps. Step 1, chatbots. Done. Happy with chatbots? We've nailed that. Level 2, reasoners. This is the thinking models. This is the O1, O3. This is the inference time compute models that spend a little time before they give you an answer, have better logic, think things through, have chain of thought, all that stuff. Level 3, agents. We may have heard of them today. Level 4 will be innovators. Right? Up till now, large language models or AI systems were not really capable of producing innovative thoughts. Right? It could remix information in innovative ways. Machine learning can come up with interesting patterns and things like that, but it wasn't actually progressing science fundamentally because it wasn't able to think outside of the training data it was already given to some extent. By the way, this is starting to happen now. Like in the last couple of weeks, there's been this sort of first sparks of AI systems coming up with thoughts that were like they were able to identify them as a brand new thought that no human had ever had, which is kind of cool, and not just a remix. And then lastly, you've got, if you've heard of ASI, artificial superintelligence, which is the intelligence in one system of the equivalent of an entire organization of humans. This is where we are now. We're moving down that ladder. So my predictions, first off, this is my predictions that I think are pretty obvious. First off, large language models get smarter and cheaper. We've seen it for the last 2 years. We're going to keep seeing it. Small language models, like 5 from Microsoft, and there's many others, are going to get to the level, Qwen 3 just came out yesterday as well. That's also another good one. We'll get to the level that the frontier large language models are at now. What that will allow is edge cases, like completely offline edge cases, or offline edge cases, or running something on your computer, on your phone. So finally, I'm going to get my Sam from her, right? I need my much smarter Siri. Okay, I need my own little personal device, runs on my own hardware. I'm not spending cloud money for this. I'm just using my phone. Okay, that's going to happen pretty soon. Agents will become ubiquitous, right? As we said, everything I just showed you today was invented in February or later, right? This is all brand new in the last 2 months. But these are going to they're going to be everywhere. And as they are, all the major SaaS players at the moment are saying we think SaaS is dead, right? This is going to take our lunch money, which is why, Salesforce is moving into Agentforce, which is why ServiceNow is moving into agents. Like all the big, and Microsoft, all the big SaaS players know that this is coming, and they're all transitioning into agent companies. So we, as developers, are all going to get very good at building agents and agent workflow hybrids. Now, I think everyone agree that all that stuff is probably coming? Yep. You'll probably agree with less of this. More salt needed for this part. This is where we're going to go a little further. So business process outsourcing is going away, right? So the idea of a call center in the Philippines is gone. We're just going to have AI agents to do all our calling for us. That's because artificial narrow intelligence, we're going to create agents, like I said with Go, that are better than any particular human at any one thing. Cool? So you won't need BPO anymore. We'll just have agents for that. Google AdWords, right. At the moment, Google AdWords is how we barter for attention for our companies, right? We want people to come to our website rather than our competitors, so we pay Google extra to rank us higher in their rankings. The A2A framework is the agent equivalent of the google.com homepage, right? So we, as businesses, will be bartering for agents' attention on the A2A framework with the same exact mechanism, right? So Google AdWords, I think, is going to become more, we're going to, like, as businesses, we're going to be spending more on the A2A marketplace than we are on the human-to-human marketplace. We're going to get to AGI, I believe, and it's going to become more and more economical over time. Interestingly, AGI, I didn't think of this at the beginning, but AGI, you know what AGI is? Artificial General Intelligence, human-level AI. When we first get there, it's going to be ridiculously inefficient and expensive, right? Like, there was humanity's last exam, which was a benchmark that was passed by '01, but they spent $10,000 to get a good mark, right, on this benchmark. So when they first kind of get to AGI, it won't really be economical to use it, but as we said, everything's getting smarter and cheaper over time. And eventually, we get artificial superintelligence, ASI, and it's used to accelerate scientific progress, which takes us slowly or quickly to a transition to a fully automated luxury space communism system. And we're going to need maybe a UBI, a universal basic income, or something like that to cushion the transition. I know this is a bit mad at this point, but I think this is in our lifetimes. And the reason is because I read too many books. So if you want to get as tin hat as me, you can read some of these books. These are great. The one on the right specifically talks a lot about the fully automated luxury space communism. So this is everything I talked about. Sorry, I went a little bit over. We, as you know, you may have got this impression, we think about AI a lot. We have these public rules at our SSW rules. So you can find these slides on GitHub. Thank you very much. Cheers. By the way, if anyone still needs points to get merch from our thing, you can use the SSW Rewards app to get some more points there. But has anyone got any questions? Yes, of course, sorry. There you go. All right, no worries. Thank you very much, guys. Appreciate it.